I did a digital detox in January. At first, I felt anxious. Like I was like, I need to check my phone, but it's important to step away from that because yes, phones are important, but when we're staring at our phones all the time, we're missing out on all the really amazing, beautiful things that are happening in our lives right in front of us.
Welcome to Wild Development Studio. Join us as we venture into the breathtaking realm of wildlife arts and untamed adventures. With captivating stories from the field and ideas to dive into the visual arts, we'll ignite your passion for conservation. Get ready to develop something wild.
Welcome to Wild Developments. I'm your guide, Lauren. Today we're talking to Gabrielle Juliano-Villani. With a successful track record of coaching in the SBA and scaling her group practice to 7 figures, Gabrielle is not just an expert. She's a mentor who understands the challenges that therapists face. After onboarding enough people to thoroughly test a smooth onboarding process, she is excited to help other therapists effortlessly expand their practice. As an international speaker, coach, stress specialist, and retreat leader, Gabrielle brings a unique blend of experience and expertise to guide you through the complexities of group practice development. Gabrielle, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Me too. I know nature plays a big part of what you do now, leading retreats, but first I want to dive into your past and being a licensed clinical social worker. I was in a burnout situation too. And I think it's important to remember why we got started and where we were before the burnout and why we put up with all that bull crap for so long until we couldn't take it anymore. So why did you want to be a social worker and what was that like?
So I had always I had like two very different career paths, actually. I shouldn't say always. When I first went to college, I was like, I either want to be a psychologist and I want to work with high risk kids, don't know where that came from, or I want to work in the fashion industry. Two completely different things. And I decided to go with fashion industry because I was like 17 and I didn't know any better. So that's where I started. I actually went to school for fashion merchandising in New York first, and I absolutely hated it. I was like, this is not for me. I'm too sensitive. I'm not good with it's very competitive. I'm not competitive like that. And it just didn't feel like a good fit for me. And actually, when I was in New York, I met a friend who was a social worker and he was working with kids in foster care. And I was like, that sounds like something that I want to do. I want to make a difference. And I think that was the biggest piece that was missing when I was working in fashion is I was like, I didn't feel like I was giving anything and I didn't really have a purpose. It didn't feel like it had deeper meaning. So that is how I got started in social work.
So what did you absolutely love about the job?
It's fast paced. And so that's good for some people, bad for others. For me, I really enjoy that and still enjoy that I've created a life where I still get to do that. So in social work, every day is always different. Nothing is ever the same. You're working with different people, you're working with different industries, you're out in the field a lot. So it's always different. And I really liked that. And I love too that I was able to help people and I was able to see that help. Not always, but a lot of times, with my kids, when I was working in child protective services, if they were in foster care, I got to see them go back home to their parents. And so it was really rewarding. And again, I liked that it was always different and I wasn't just sitting in front of a desk every day.
At what point did you realize that you couldn't do that anymore? If you can talk about that part of your story.
Yeah, so there were two times where this happened. And the first was when I was working in child protective services. I'd been there for almost 3 years, which in that field is very seasoned because most people don't last that long because it is very high stress and high strung. And I kept hanging on because I didn't want to leave the kids on my caseload and the families on my caseload. And that environment was pretty toxic also. And they were, using that to hang over my head too. Like, if you leave, who's going to take care of these kids? And your families love you and your clients love you. But I was working 70, 80 hours a week. I was sick. I was having nightmares. I had a very, very, very high acuity caseload. So I had a lot of really difficult, complex cases. And I kept hanging on. And then this was in like 2015, I think. My supervisor, who had been there for 25 years, quit with no notice. And I was like, oh shit. And then it actually gave me the push because I was like, if she can leave, then I can leave too and I can find something different. So I did. And then I moved on to working as a care manager for an insurance company, which I actually really loved, but they were doing some layoffs and I knew that our team was next. So that's when I moved into private practice, which I also loved because I was working for myself. And because of the clients that I was working with, I got really full really quickly because of my niche. So I thought, well, like, what do I do now? And actually, one of my Zumba students who was an OT said, why don't you hire somebody? It's a great way to scale your business. You can just become a group practice. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to do that, but I'll figure it out. And I did. And I hired one person and that went well and she got full. So I hired another. And then before I knew it in 2021, I had 15 people working for me. And I was super, super burnt out because I never had done any of the internal work that I should have done beforehand about people pleasing and setting clear boundaries. And it all just kind of came to a head. So in 2021, I sold my group practice and I completely pivoted. And now I do things that are more in line with my own purpose and vision, which is retreats and consulting and coaching.
So it almost sounds like you went through burnout a couple times.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
And I keep finding myself in the what age are you?
I'm going to be 37 next week.
Okay, because I'm 42. So maybe it's just our generation where we push
Yeah.
ourselves to that point of exhaustion and burnout. How can you recognize in yourself when you're getting to that point of burnout?
That's a great question. And I also agree with you. I think that Gen Z has it a little bit more figured out than our generation did. And there's definitely, I think, a message for our generation about hustling and what success should look like and what we're supposed to be doing. So good for you, Gen Z, that you don't have to deal with that, hopefully. But we're learning as we go.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, burnout, a lot of people use that term interchangeably with stress, and it's actually different. So, stress is too much and like always going, 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 like the hustling. And burnout is actually the opposite of that. Burnout is not enough. So, burnout is more like being numb. For me, the biggest things that I noticed were apathy. So that was a really big red flag, especially being a therapist where I'm supposed to be holding space for my clients and listening to their stories and helping them move through things. I would be like, when is this session going to be over? I can't like sit here and listen to this anymore. If my team needed me, it was like, I don't care. I hate being needed. Like, I can't reply to you right now. Like, everything just felt really overwhelming and like too much. And so the apathy was the biggest red flag. And then I also think just like irritability in my mood too. That was another big red flag. And just noticing that like I was always angry, I was always in a bad mood. I was snippy at everybody around me. I couldn't be compassionate to anyone. Everything just felt really overwhelming. And that's just kind of when I realized, like, I actually remember one day I woke up and I was like, I just want to throw my phone against the wall. Like, I just want to burn this all down. I can't do it anymore.
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't want to live like that. That's not really living or engaging, right? And so that was like my wake up call, I guess.
So what did you do to try and get over that? Once you've recognized that in yourself that you were feeling that burnout, you made some changes. I sometimes it's been almost 4 years. I still feel like I'm recovering from burnout. What are some things that you did to recover?
I agree with that. I think I started feeling burned out in 2020 and now it's 2024 and I still struggle with that sometimes too. So I think it's important to remember that it was a pattern that took a really long time to get there and it takes a long time to undo it
Mm.
also. So the things that help me are actually all really small things. And so I think people think there's like this big, amazing thing that happens, but it really was just a lot of small things. Going on a retreat was really helpful to me. Um, and also learning about myself and learning about my own values. I did a lot of work on like, what do I actually want my life to look like? What lights me up? What gets me excited? How can I make sure that I'm doing those things every single day? Or how do I make sure that like my career, my job, whatever is aligned with those? And those are the really big things. And every day that just really looks like pausing, checking in with myself, making sure that if somebody asked me to do something, I was always a person that would say yes, even if it was too much. And so now I know I need to pause. Like, is that okay? Is that something that I really want to do? Or am I having a response that's telling me maybe that's not really what you like or what's in line with you? Or maybe it's on a day where I'm already doing too much and I know that I have to be very intentional about my own energy levels. And so if I am recording a podcast with you, I'm not going to record a podcast with somebody else on the same day because I know that I have to be very present and I have to give a lot of myself here and I want to do that. Therefore, I'm not going to book a bunch of other things where I have to do that in the same day. And of course, I know that I'm very privileged that I can work in that way and not everybody can, but there are still ways that you can pay attention to your own energy levels and create things that work best for you. So those are some ways. My energy, again, is a really big one. I know that I'm lucky enough to live in a place where it's sunny a lot of the year and warm. And so taking walks, being outside, getting morning sunlight is hugely, hugely important to me. And again, I know that sounds really small, but if I don't get sun in the morning, it makes a very big difference in my mood.
I absolutely agree with that. Our cell phones, like,
Oh,
how
yeah.
do you take a moment to check in with yourself? Because we all have these stupid rectangular devices that are always beeping at us, telling us, no, pay attention to me when we really need
Yep.
to pay attention to ourselves.
This is such a good point. And it's so funny that you bring that up because I literally wrote an email this morning to my email list about how we're like addicted to our screens. And I mean, I'm no exception. A lot of my business comes from social media, and I run Facebook groups and I have to post on Instagram and all the things that we have to do. And I think it's important to, again, pay attention to that. But also, I did a digital detox in January. And I did one last January too, and I should probably do it way more often than that. But at first I felt anxious. Like I was like, I need to check my phone and I need to make sure that like nobody commented on this post or nobody asked me this or that, or what's the next thing that's going on? I need to check my email. And I think I felt like that like the first day or two, and then it kind of subsided and it felt really good to be away from my phone. So phones, yes, they are important. We need them. But when I did that digital detox, nothing bad happened. Nobody died. Nobody couldn't get a hold of me if they needed to. My business did not flounder, and I have things in place to help with that. I have automations and processes and people that help me. But it's important to step away from that because yes, phones are important, but when we're staring at our phones all the time, we're missing out on all the really amazing, beautiful things that are happening in our lives right in front of us.
Absolutely. I'm taking a class on forest bathing, and part of that was there's a whole section on digital detox, and they suggested 4 days. And I'm like, I don't know that I could go 4 days without looking at my phone. Is that how long you did it for?
I did it for probably, yeah, I think it was like 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
And it's hard. And also last year in January, I was kind of forced into it because where we were traveling and we were in the Cook Islands, which is far, far away, and they don't really have great Wi-Fi there. And so my phone just doesn't work. So there was nothing to do except for use it to take pictures.
That's my plan then. I'm going to go to
Yes,
Cook Islands.
I approve of that. I agree with that. It's the only way. but it does help. And kind of the same thing this January too. I was in Belize and where we were staying didn't have great Wi-Fi either, so I couldn't really check.
That's a good
Sometimes
way
that's
to
what you
do it.
need. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you know all about that with leading retreats. So what inspired you to start leading retreats?
So I was really inspired because of the retreat that I had been on and how much it helped me. And I could see that it really does make a difference. So I think if you're on the outside looking in, you might be like, what can you do in like a couple of days? That can't really make a big difference, but it actually does. And so that helped me see that, like, yes, when you do take a step back from your real life, doesn't fix everything, right? Like, you still have to go back and the
Mhm.
emails will be there and your phone will be there and whatever. But being on a retreat really gives you the space and time to step back from the everyday and to be kind of like in a vacuum where you can learn more about yourself, tune into yourself, connect with others, and really learn the skills that you need to go back to manage your stress better. And I think that was the biggest thing that I noticed too is like, we don't have time or we don't prioritize it. And so we just kind of are going through the motions every single day and we're on autopilot. But when you can take a step back and prioritize yourself and have that space to integrate and also in a different environment is huge
Mm.
because a lot of us work from home or we're just like in our day to day, right? But if you can go to a place that's new and different, the energy is different, the nature is different, and that plays a huge part in all of it too.
And what type of person are these retreats good for?
They are good for anybody who is struggling with managing their stress, anybody who feels burnt out or who has been burnt out before, or if you're looking to just really do deeper self-care. So my retreats, I call it, that it focuses on real self-care because self-care has been like so watered down and everybody is like, oh, get a massage or take a bubble bath, but that doesn't solve things, right? So my retreats really focus on nervous system regulation, which is important because that's how we manage our emotions, and everybody has a nervous system. Um, and there's men and women that come, and I know that sounds really broad, but usually the people that come to my retreats are high achievers, people that are always going, and people that really want to do the deeper work and take a step back.
Yeah, I find that because I signed myself up for like local retreats and I'm like, this is my excuse
Hmm.
to put it like because I'm always go, 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 and I don't know how to stop. So I definitely use that retreat time as a way to unplug from everything. Can you talk about some of the healing and wellness benefits that happen during your retreats? I know you talked about Belize. What are some of the benefits of being in nature down there?
Oh, God, it's so beautiful. And I love that, especially with Belize. I mean, you can have an amazing retreat in so many places, but what I love about Belize is that it's very easy to get to for most of us. So if you're in North America and the US and Canada, it's a really easy, like 4 hour flight from most
Oh, wow.
places. And it's a central time zone, so you're not like having to go back or forward 6 hours, which that makes a really big difference too.
Mhm.
And of course, it's beautiful. It's a newer country. It's a little bit smaller. The vibe is similar to Costa Rica, but I like to say it's like a little bit more rustic. So it's not as like bougie as some of the places in Costa Rica, and that's actually what I really like about it. And you have the jungle and the coast, which I also really love. So the one I just did in January, we were in the jungle. We were on the McCall River. We had all of these amazing birds and animals coming to visit us every day at breakfast and at dinner. And the pool is like this infinity pool, and you're overlooking the river. And I remember laying there next to one of the participants, and, we were sunbathing and just talking. And she was like, look at the green trees next to the bright blue sky, and look how stunning that is. Like, those are little moments that we call glimmers that make a huge, huge difference in your stress and just being mindful. And then, of course, the one that I'm hosting in June is on the coast. It's on a private island resort. So we have the ocean and lots of other different animals. But I mean, there's tons of research that if people don't know that blue and green are actually very calming to your body and to your mind. And so being surrounded by that is hugely important.
What are some of the other activities that you guys do on these retreats?
So in the one in the jungle, we did some river tubing, which was really cool. We went to some Mayan temples. We hiked to the Belize Botanic Gardens, and saw all of the really cool indigenous plants that are local to Belize. And we also had a Mayan shaman come and do a blessing for us. And then in June, we will also have some cultural things that will be happening. With some local Belizeans who will come and do some drumming and teach us more about the culture there. And we'll also be snorkeling to the reef. So there's a barrier reef in Belize that's the biggest one in the northern hemisphere. So we'll be snorkeling there. We'll be paddle boarding and kayaking together. And then we will also do some stargazing because there's no light pollution. So you can actually see all the beautiful planets and stars in the night sky.
Man, well, how many people do you take on your retreats?
They're small and intimate, and I plan to keep them that way. So no more than like 12 to 14, but I actually really prefer like 8 to 10 is kind of the sweet spot.
So, I talked to somebody a couple weeks ago and he does photography trips and they still meet once a year and they stay in contact with each other. I imagine traveling to someplace as beautiful as Belize, you guys really form a connection. Do you still stay in contact with some of the people that have been on the retreats?
Yes, and that's actually one of the best things that come out of it, actually, I find, is the connection. And we think in the retreat, like all of these activities and all of the sound healing and the group coaching and all those things that I do are like the most important, but it's really the connection and the community and the things that happen outside of those moments that I find are strongest. And we have a WhatsApp chat and we're still talking in there. We're sharing a lot of recipes because the food was also really amazing. So we're like sharing all the like smoothies that we learned to make there and like this Belizean chicken soup that is so good. And yeah, so we're all super connected still and still talking in our WhatsApp and also on social media, which is really cool to see.
That's fantastic. Because then, you can go on a vacation and then once it's over, it's over. But when you have an experience with other people like that and you've built that community, I mean, that's priceless.
It really is. And it's really just it's so special and it's so magical. And it's not something that you can just recreate every day.
What has been your favorite activity to do in nature, either during the retreat or on your own?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's interesting because I am such an ocean person and I like being on the water. And so I really love doing water activities. I love paddleboarding. I like to surf. But I actually just really love both on retreats and not just being mindful and being outside. And so that might just be like a quick walk or a quick hike. But and when I say mindful, I mean like being totally present and like taking time and space to not be on my phone and to notice what's happening around me. Is the sun shining? Am I hearing birds? What am I seeing? Like those moments they just make such a big difference. Again, like I said earlier, in my mood. And I think it's just so important because we don't stop to do that very often.
I definitely agree. Let's see. Do you have a favorite memory in nature?
Ooh, I do. And I mean, I have a lot, but I'm thinking most recently, I just came back from Colombia and my friend there was getting married. And we did some really amazing things in nature. And the one that just came to mind was we did a coffee tour. And in Colombia, they still hand pick all the cherries to be roasted into the beans.
Wow.
And we did that experience, and it was just very eye-opening. First of all, it was super meditative because you're just in this field, like looking for the correct, they have to be dark red. So you're like looking for the dark red ones to pick and put them in your little basket. And so that whole thing was very meditative, but it was also just perspective that, like, this is where the coffee comes from that I'm drinking every single morning. Somebody is out here hand picking it.
Puts a whole new gratitude on your cup of coffee in the morning.
Yes, for sure.
Man, I wonder what they need to wake up in the morning.
I know, and they're out there early too because it's so hot. And so like that was the other thing is like the sun is like beating down on us and we were only doing that for like 20 minutes instead of hours, you know? So it
Wow.
was just really eye-opening.
Have you had a moment outdoors where you had to face some sort of obstacle, planned or unexpected, and you overcame that obstacle, if I can talk? And how did you come out on the other side of it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something that's maybe not so intense, but the first one that I thought of actually was my husband and I were hiking when we used to live in Colorado. Um, this was probably like 10 years ago. And we were hiking up to, I think it's called Bailey Lake. I can't remember. But anyway, it's like a 2 mile, well, 4 mile out and back. And it's very remote. And we were the only people up there. And we got a little bit off trail. And that was kind of scary. And we were like a little bit confused about where we needed to go. And I'm like trying to use the compass on my phone, but I'm like all turned around. And it was almost sunset, which was also really scary. So it was like a little bit later in the day. And I was looking at my phone for the compass. And then I look up and a mama moose was standing like close, like within 10, 12 feet. And she
Oh my
had her
gosh.
two little babies with her. And I was like, oh shit. Like if you've never been close to a moose before, they're huge. And it was super intimidating because she was with her babies. And I was like, am I going to get like mauled down by this moose and die right now? And she was starting to do like the thing with her feet, like she was going to charge at me. So we just like didn't make eye contact and we were just still for a minute and she kind of checked us out and then they just moved on. So we
Whew.
made it and I lived.
Live to tell a tale. Oh man. It probably felt like an eternity standing there in front of this giant because they are huge.
Yeah. I mean, again, it was like incredible to see that up close in nature, but it was terrifying. And I think it was maybe like less than a minute, but it felt like an hour.
It sounds like you guys did the right thing. No eye contact, staying calm.
Yeah. Which was terrifying because, again, you know all these things, but when you're in the moment, right, you're like, oh my God, what do I do? I forgot. But we
And
were
it's
safe.
incredible that something so big can just kind of sneak up on you like that too.
That's the other thing is like we didn't hear her at all. And all of a sudden she's right in front of me. So
Whew. Well, I'm glad you made it out okay.
me too.
We are almost out of time. Can you let people know how they can find you and how they can sign up for your retreats?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find because of my super long, unique last name. So my website is just my name with no hyphen. It's GabrielleJuliano-Villani.com. And that's the same on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And then on Instagram, I'm at GJV Consulting.
Very good. And I'll make sure to tag all those places in the show notes so somebody can, if they want to do a retreat with you, they can hop on and connect with you there. And before we go, do you have one tip for somebody that would like to connect or maybe reconnect with nature?
I think my tip would be to start small. So I think sometimes, when we get out of practice with things, it feels really overwhelming to add something. So even if you just go outside for 30 seconds, or even though I know we're talking about phones and how bad they are, however, if that's all that you can manage, even just looking at a picture on your phone of nature is a really fast way to practice mindfulness and reset your nervous system and come back to a place where you can be really grounded and compassionate.
That is a great tip. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
And until next time, get outside and see what develops.
Thanks for joining Wild Development Studio. We hope this exploration into the world of wildlife arts and adventure has sparked a desire to get outside and connect with something wild. If you have an adventure that's awe-inspiring, don't hesitate to share. Click the link in the description to submit your story to have it featured on our show or be a guest. Until next time, keep connecting to the wild and see what develops. The views, opinions, and statements expressed by individuals during Wild Development Studio productions do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Wild Development Studio or its affiliates. Participation in any activities, expeditions, or adventures discussed or promoted during our content may involve inherent risks. It is strongly advised that individuals conduct thorough research, seek professional guidance, and take all necessary precautions before engaging in any such activities. Wild Development Studio, its representatives, or employees shall not be held responsible for any injury, loss, damage, accident, or unforeseen incident that may occur as a result of participating in activities inspired by or discussed in our content. By choosing to engage with our content or act upon any information provided, individuals do so at their own risk and discretion.